The other four, they just chopped up with their swords. Not stabbing them, not cutting through, they just start chopping them up. John Brown, everybody. So John Brown believed, because of the attack on Lawrence, that it made it okay for him to now up the ante. Oh, you destroy property, I will kill you. Then in his mind, that's justice. And so he went and killed 5 men, not at all involved in the attack on Lawrence, but 5 men who were in his mind wicked because they were pro-slavery. And so he did that. This is going to begin a guerrilla type war in Kansas, killing hundreds of people a year, destroying thousands of dollars or millions of dollars of property damage every year, and it's going to go on and on and on. At the same time in Kansas, we have 2 governments ruling the territory. John Brown will flee. He will come up again. We'll talk about him tomorrow. But he will run away. So this is bad because it starts violence in Kansas, which people predicted. Nobody really predicted the next thing we're going to talk about. And that is, that's an older John Brown, who we'll talk about. Nobody really predicted the next one, which is violence in the Senate. So let me introduce our main characters in this ordeal. First one, a man by the name of Charles Sumner. Not Summers, but Sumner. Charles Sumner, he was a U.S. Senator from the state of Massachusetts. Can you guess what his status or view towards slavery was, based on the fact that he's from Massachusetts? What's his view towards slavery? Amanda?
He was an abolitionist.
Without a doubt, he's an abolitionist. He's an avowed, that's how he got elected, that he hated slavery. He speaks out against it. Now, in May of 1856, he is going to give a speech. The speech was titled, Crime Against Kansas. The Crime Against Kansas. In this speech, Charles Sumner is going to make fun of, belittle, put down Southerners, slavery, Southern mentality. And let me read you a quote from Charles Sumner. You don't need to write it down. But Charles Sumner had this to say about Southerners, and specifically those from Missouri, because he's referring to people voting illegally. So he said, the pro-slavery Missourians who crossed over into Kansas were hirelings picked from the drunken spew and vomit of an uneasy civilization. So he's just now called Southerners from Missouri nothing better than vomit.
How did they find out that Missouri rescued?
I don't think they hit it very well. I don't think. I mean, all it took is, who are these people coming in? They're not from my town. And all of a sudden, there's maybe 500 people who voted today are not even from, and they allowed it to happen. So that's how. I mean, I don't think it was a big secret. So Sumner's going to go one step further, and he's going to blame one person. He says, hey, listen, these people from Missouri, they're too dumb. They can't think of it on their own. They didn't come up with this on their own. Somebody told them to do this. That somebody was a U.S. Senator by the name of Andrew Butler from South Carolina. It's a good look. Why wig? I think it's just grow my hair out and just style it like that. It's an awesome look. I think one of you should grow that out for homecoming or for prom or whatever. You had the ball, whatever. You just grow that thing.
Grow that thing?
Yeah, I don't care. All right, so Andrew Butler. He now was singled out as the cause of all the problems in Kansas. And so Andrew Butler, a proud gentleman from the South, if somebody dishonors you, what do you do? Duel. Yes, if you challenge the person to duel. And so Andrew Butler had a relative who's a member of Congress, also from South Carolina. So Preston Brooks, a congressman. Yeah, well, we're getting there. Hold on. Preston Brooks, a member of Congress, he tells his relative, listen, you can't let Sumner get away with this one. you've got to challenge him to a duel. And everyone said, listen, he will never accept a duel. There's no way he'll, because he's not from that mentality. He's a northerner. And they, Southerners saw themselves as men. They could live off the land, they can shoot guns, they can fend for themselves. They viewed northerners as, oh, they're book smart. They get paper cuts and their day is over. And so they don't see Charles Sumner as ever accepting a duel. And so we can't do that. We got to find another way. Preston Brooks, younger than Andrew Butler, more hot-headed. So he waited 2 days and realized he's not going to do anything. I'll do something for the South. I'll do something to avenge the honor of my family. So 2 days after he gave this, we're still in May of 1856, Charles Sumner is sitting at his desk, and let me put this in, some frame of reference for you. Charles Sumner, 6'3", over 200 pounds. He's a big guy for this time period. He is sitting at the desk that are wooden desk. The wooden desks are bolted to the ground. So Charles Sumner, at his size, his stature, he's got to wedge himself into the desk, so literally now he's stuck. Preston Brooks, Mr. Gentleman, Mr. Southern Gentleman, is going to walk up behind Charles Sumner, start yelling and ranting. But before Charles Sumner can do anything, Preston Brooks takes out his cane and cracks Sumner over the head. Not once, but according to witnesses, about 30 times. Charles Sumner, to defend himself, he gets hit. And obviously you start seeing stars. He will literally rip the desk from the floor. But in the process of doing that, he's been hit several other times. And so all of a sudden now he's losing consciousness and he's going to the ground. And so everybody else around his cell phone's out filming the whole thing. And they're like, oh, I got $5 on Sumner. And so they pull Brooks off. Charles Sumner, he can't go to work. He's got a concussion, I'm sure, amongst other things wrong with his head. He can't go to work for 2.5 years. It takes him 2.5 years to recover from his injuries. Preston Brooks, it's a different, it's the 1850s, and these are the elite Americans. He is fined $300. Yeah, that's it. Fined $300. Congress will censor him, meaning he can't participate in debates. He can't introduce bills. So he has his job, but essentially he doesn't have his job. He's there, but he really can't do anything. So Preston Brooks will resign his job, step down, and when his seat comes up for re-election again, he ran, he won, and when he took the floor of the House of Representatives, Southerners all stood up and gave him a standing O. Said, good job, welcome back. And then one at a time, the Southern congressman would approach Brooks's desk and put a cane wrapped up in a bow on it. Thank you for everything you did. And so after the event that became known as Bully Brooks, only in the North, Southerners will never see it that way, the event is going to divide America. Most Northerners interpret the event as, oh my goodness, again, they ignore the whole because John Brown episode, Northerners, they looked at John Brown and said, good for you. Good for you, John Brown. You did what probably we should all be doing right now to stop slavery. Southerners, they look at John Brown as, what a wacko. Oh my goodness, is that what abolitionists are like? We can't trust them. They're all radical. Well, now, tides have turned. Because Northerners, they look at this guy, oh, poor Charles Sumner. He spoke the truth. And typical Southerners, typical slave owners, they don't know how to solve their problems of words. They can't use words. They're too dumb. They can't articulate a sentence. And so to defend themselves, they use violence. They sneak up on a person and crack him in the head. They don't even give the guy a chance. Typical slave owner. Southerners look at the whole thing as, good job. Well done. You did what we all want to do. Abolitionists sticking their nose in our affairs. They have no business telling us how to live our lives. Keep to yourselves. If you don't, we're going to keep doing this to you. And so country is dividing even more. So the Bully Brooks, Bleeding Kansas, both had a huge impact on this one. There's no, if you're going to run in 1856, there was no way you could avoid discussing Bully Brooks, Bleeding Kansas, the fugitive slave law, compromise in 1850. People are asking and they want answers. So our candidates in 1856, James Buchanan, and we pronounce it Buchanan, not Buchanan, because I get that a lot. Oh, you mean James Buchanan? No, I don't. I mean Buchanan. And again, I don't care what you call him, as long as you remember something about him. James Buchanan is a Democrat. His whole approach at this time in history, he will come out and claim that he supports popular sovereignty out west. That obviously he's going to defend slavery in the South. But he's taken more of this middle road. I support popular sovereignty. You know, I'm okay with that. So I appease you. I'm okay with California being free. And so he is saying something that people will be happy with. Everybody's going to be happy with. His opponent, Mr. Fremont. Why do we know him? Why should you know him? We just talked about him yesterday. John C. Fremont. Oh my goodness. I'm sure you'll be fine on the final, which I'm going to require you to know things from August. You'll be fine. No big deal. I like it. Okay, went to California. Okay, and? And ultimately, this whole event is called what? Their flag revolt. He wasn't directly involved, but he's indirectly involved. So that's John C. Fremont. He's the very first candidate to run for the Republican Party. They had high hopes for him. He's an up-and-coming politician. He's got military fame. For him, though, he comes out and pretty much says the following, that he opposes popular sovereignty out west. He opposes it. He opposes the Kansas-Nebraska Act. He condemned, he's basically saying, I don't like that the Missouri Compromise line was repealed. Don't like that at all. So he is giving opinions, which, people want, but the problem is he's now going to isolate Southerners. The Southern vote, the middle of the road vote, he is pushing them away as a result of this. It's a close-ish election, but because Fremont was more adamant on his beliefs, whereas Buchanan kind of plays the middle of the road, I'm going to try to make as many people happy, Buchanan is going to win out. There will be another candidate. They bring him in. Mr. Fillmore wants back in, and so he's going to run as the know-nothing candidate. He doesn't do well. I mean, he does okay. He does better than most third-party candidates. So Buchanan will win this election, which honestly many historians argue had Fremont won, what probably would have happened. If Fremont would have won in '56, arguably what would have happened? We don't know, but what arguably would have happened?
They would have brought back the Missouri Compromise and put the
Okay, that's
more
possible.
division.
Okay, so more division, but ideally, a Republican, if the Republican won, because what do most Southerners believe Republicans stand for? Abolitionism. 1860, who won the election? Lincoln, what political party? What do they believe he's going to do? So, argument is, had Fremont won, Civil War would have started in '57. Arguably. We don't know that at all, but it's going to happen 4 years later. And nothing really, other events are going to happen to divide the nation further, but the nation's already divided at this point. And the Southerners do not trust, nor do they like the Republican Party, what they want to do. And so history easily could have changed at this point, but it didn't. Buchanan won. Southerners are happy about that one. Buchanan himself, he's from Pennsylvania, so he can get that northern vote, but he's also in favor of slavery, so he gets the southern vote. So he keeps things happy. He doesn't do a whole lot in his term. He kind of appeases everybody and doesn't get involved, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. So that's the election of 1856. The next thing I want to talk about is this one. You need to know the Supreme Court case. We're almost done too. We're gonna finish a little early, I think. Which I know you're saddened by. I guess I could review too.
No.
No, Miss Garcia, we like the form test. That's cool.
How's time?
I'll remember that come April too. Hey, let's review. No, you guys don't like reviewing. I get it. All right. So, Dred Scott case. The case was decided on March 6th, 1857. 2 days after what? inauguration, because inauguration will be March 4th. So Buchanan had just got inaugurated March 4th, March 6th, Supreme Court's going to have this decision. Dred Scott was a slave. He was born into slavery. His master was an army surgeon. His master will take him, because of his master's job as an army surgeon, will take him to various states, various territories throughout the United States itself. Some of those being free states and free territories. And Dred Scott lived in those areas an extended period of time. So Dred Scott began talking to people. He's an army, his master's an army surgeon, and so Dred Scott, he interacts with wealthy, well-to-do people in the country, and they began telling him, listen, you spend a substantial amount of time in a free state. You're free. I don't think that's true. No, it is. And so there were cases, local cases throughout the United States, where slaves had received their freedom based on spending a substantial amount of time in a free state or territory. But none of those cases ever made their way to the Supreme Court. His will. So his master died. To avoid being sold sold to somebody else, Dred Scott is going to sue for his freedom, saying, I live, my rights have been violated. I've lived in free territories and states a good chunk of my life. I've earned my freedom. I deserve that freedom. I'm owed the freedom. So the case makes its way to the Supreme Court. At this time, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is a guy by the name of Roger Taney, no longer Mr. Marshall. Roger Taney, interesting person in history. He's a Southerner, pro-slavery, 80 years of age at this time. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't age discriminate people who are older. Just me. But he's 80 years of age, and it's his job for life. So he was described as very frail, very sick. We already know he's pro-slavery. He also made no, because older people tend not to hide their life. If this is but these are my beliefs. I'm going to tell you. I don't care how you feel about it. He told everybody how he felt about it. He hated the Republican Party. Hated the Republican Party. Doesn't trust them. Believes they are an abolitionist group. And he said, "I'll defend the Southern way of life for as long as I live, and I'll defend slavery as long as I live." So that's Roger Taney, Chief Justice, and here he is, Mr. Taney. And although he ends up being a good guy. I don't know if he ended up being a good guy. So, all right. So that is his ruling. The Supreme Court ruling was this: number one, Dred Scott cannot claim his rights have been violated. Why not? Kevin, he's not a citizen first and foremost. Taney said, "You're not a citizen. You have no rights. Zero rights." That's number one. Number two, Taney argued, or just stated, just because a slave goes to a free state or free territory, they are not free, ever. That concerns a lot of Northerners. What's the point of claiming that we're a free state if Southerners are now free to take their slaves here? It angers Northerners. So again, a sectional issue here. Thirdly, Taney argued that the United States Congress did not have the right to abolish slavery in any territory of the United States of America. So he's basically saying, in any territory, slavery can't exist. So he's also, by that ruling, he's saying that Missouri Compromise, it was illegal, and he would have overturned it anyway. It's already been repealed, but Taney is saying Congress cannot exclude slavery in territories. So he's basically opening everything to popular sovereignty, at least territories, not states. So that's a Supreme Court case known as Dred Scott. The last thing I want to mention today, I think it's the last thing. The last thing I want to mention today has to do with Kansas. Last time we talked about Kansas, what was going on? It's bleeding. How many governments? All right, nothing has changed. When Buchanan became president of the United States, he appointed a brand new governor in Kansas. And he told the governor, sat down with him and said, listen, your job, you have one job in Kansas. I want you to have one more election. I want it to be a fair election. And whatever the results of the election, we're moving forward with one government. Okay, he goes to Kansas. He has an election. Cheating existed. People cried foul, you can't do that. People debated it. It was controversial. The governor quit his job. He resigned. And so we're right back where we started from. And so the end result of Kansas was this. Puberty, wow. So Kansas will become a state in the Union. They did so on January 29th, 1861. January 29th, 1861, Kansas became a free state in the Union. Can anyone explain to me how in the world they were able to become a free state? How is this possible? Kevin?
I was gonna say, the South started this secession. Someone was opposing.
Well done. You are 100% correct. You're the only person to get it today in all three classes. So, well done. Here's the reality, because I got the answer. I got both classes. Well, the Civil War started. Civil War does not start until April of 1861. But once Lincoln's election results are known, states begin to secede from the Union. So by the end of January 1861, not all of them have seceded yet, but several have left the Union, which means when Congress convenes, X number of senators, X number of congressmen, they look around the room, there's a lot of empty seats here, because several states have already left the Union. Well, who wants to take a vote on Kansas being a free state? And all of a sudden now the Northerners had the majority of the votes, they voted Kansas in as a free state. That's how it comes in at that point. So that is where I will stop. Tomorrow we will continue this discussion, the road to the Civil War. We will get the Civil War started tomorrow.